Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege for a journalist and a writer to introduce the kind of personality that people associate with something deeper, something higher. And Shahni ji is, in some senses, one of the few remaining remaining names from a time when cinema was not driven entirely by the market, and it could try things. People were very caught with the idea of trying new things, of taking risks, of doing the kind of things that we expect young people to do. So we have with us today a 78-year-old young man who has taken many risks in his life. He has consistently taken risks. I'm sure all of you have your mobile phones and you can look up his profile on Wikipedia. You realize that he hasn't made too many films. I have actually seen only one feature film of his when I was in college at that time, and this is a film called Kasbah. And I remember that film quite graphically because in that film he managed to paint the realities, the very tough realities of small town Mufassil, India, in a way that was both unique and universal. And all of us, I mean, if you can see that film on YouTube now, and it takes a while to get into the film, but then you realize that he can show something very big in something very small. And that, as anybody can tell you, is a rare ability. He has, over a long and interesting life, collaborated with some names that are legendary. He has worked with Bresson, right? Bresson is, well, I don't need to explain who Bresson is. He has been taught by D.D. Koshambi, one of the great polyglots in India, a man of much learning. And Shahni ji has attended the Film Technology Institute of India in Pune. You have also taught there, I believe. Yeah. And then, of course, he's been taught by the great Hrithik Ghatak, who a lot of people mistakenly think as merely a Bengali filmmaker. But if you ask anybody who has been touched by Hrithik Ghatak's films, he was a colossus. So it's not often that we have somebody come and talk to us who's used to diving at great depths. Most of the time, we tend to wade in shallow waters, which are sometimes even ankle deep, because we are too scared to go into deep things. Some of us are slightly better, we know how to swim. Some of us are even good swimmers. Me, I know how to drown, that's about it. But we have with us today somebody who knows how to dive deep and pull things out that you don't typically get to see, that you don't typically get to experience. And this experience is also going to be a little strange, a little awkward for you, because we are not used to depth as such. So it is my great honor to hand over the microphone to Shahni ji, and we thought about his talk yesterday, and we decided on the title "Yun Hota to Kya Hota," because he's going to talk about movement and I am quite sure if you are willing to lend some patience to it, he's going to move you. Over to Shani.
And I must also thank, first of all, Ramashankar for having invited me here, as well as the Vice Chancellor, and Ramashankarji's family for hosting me at the place that we are living in. I must say that I'm very lucky to have Sopan with me because he's a great communicator. We've been spending a lot of time together last evening as well. And he immediately becomes, more alive than anybody else in the group, wherever he is, as soon as some idea is thrown by anyone in that company. So he begins interpreting it in such a way that he's able to re-communicate to the very person who's making a proposal of some kind, to give that very person an insight into what that person has imagined. Today's talk was named what it was named also by him, because we were talking about the subjunctive, about language, and about the relationship between language and cinema, and between imaging of other kinds, and the action that it leads to, which could be moral or political or amoral, if you like, and transcendental at the same time. So there are many, many modes, and we have to understand how those modes come into being. And our attempt today will be to find how those modes arise, disappear, and come into action. The verb is the most important thing in a sentence, vis-a-vis all that we are exploring, or in the event where it is happening. And in our tradition, at least, I believe that everything can be traced back, at least to the Upanishads, for beginning to understand how being and action come together, and the movement between the two as well. So in all the philosophical systems, not only of our country, but those that have evolved outside, which we don't think of as being Indian, have probably their origins in that kind of speculation, if you want to call it that. But to begin with, now, let us see that which is happening right now.
These are the latest images of the volcano in Ayafia, Layakul. The eruption started in the early hours of Sunday morning and is happening between two basins near a mountain walking path that's popular with tourists and hill climbers alike. Experts had feared that it could trigger another eruption in the nearby Katla volcano that has historically been much more powerful. A similar outpouring of lava there could threaten to melt the glacier ice and provoke widespread flooding, with some scientists warning it could have a global impact. Icelanders are used to these sorts of eruptions, as their island lies on a hotspot atop the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a highly volatile boundary between the Eurasian and North American tectonic plates. The last volcanic eruption here occurred in 1821. Almost all the 600 people who were moved from their homes at the weekend have now been allowed to return, although inhabitants of 14 nearby farms are still excluded on safety grounds. The authorities will be keeping a close eye on the volcano for any signs it may be worsening. Dominic Kane, BBC News.
Because if you join South America and North America with Africa and Europe, they fit in like two pieces of paper that have been torn apart. And now there's an entire Atlantic Ocean, north and south, between those two continents. The only place where you can see those two continents still joined is Iceland. And there is a valley where you can see how the Eurasian plate is separating from the American plate. And which is why Iceland is also tectonically a very dramatic place, full of ice and fire.
Thank you very much. Happening right now, and we are sitting here on the same planet and watching all this through images which are being relayed to us more or less within minutes of what is happening there. And we are watching it very comfortably, extremely comfortably. No ice, no fire, as he says. Now, what does this imply for our psyche? It means that we have a sense of kind of omniscience, that we can come to know anything fully, and that having known then, that we can immediately act upon it in some way or the other, which is something which is immediately actually exploited, this very sense of omniscience, of knowing everything, at the very time it is happening. It gets completely, trapped into an illusion given to us by the media all the time and by people who control our senses as well as our cognition, our knowledge of how our perceptions get then transferred to certain generalizations which are about that, and therefore, as citizens of so-called democracies, we are empowered to act upon them. But actually, that is far from the case. You can see it from my own passivity at this time, or yours, if you like. That actually, I can't do any damn thing about it, can I? Now,
Increase the volume, I guess.
So, you see, we live with this illusion, and it has been, above all, brought to this kind of nonsensical empowerment by what a wonderful Persian thinker living in Paris, I've forgotten his name, now you'll forgive me, who talks about this continuous present tense in which we live, and says that, and we articulate everything in the continuous present tense most of the time. What is called the infinitive, in the infinitive. in the continuous present or the present, then we will actually be responding only to the contingent, only that which happens in an unpredictable way. We will not sum it up, for example, through the past and a projection in the future. For instance, when someone came and said to you what the significance of that is in terms of our knowledge of our own earth. It is an accumulation of knowledge which he brought in front of us, for which we should be grateful to him. And by chance, of course, we are meeting him and we are seeing that at this time. It's by chance, more or less. And now, this has become a great problem, because our entire motor action also gets affected. It is not just that the perception of things has got affected. It's our action, motor action as well, which has got affected because of these illusionary empowerments that we have, as it were. And along with it, a great kind of disempowerment is taking place. We are losing the ability to articulate. Someone is doubly articulate than I am, for example. And I'm very happy that he is so. He speaks 2 or 3 languages with as much ease as you can imagine. He's able to communicate it all. But, what is happening overall to us is that we are losing modes of address. Now, if you take any classical language, I have a very slight acquaintance with one classical language, which many of you do better than me, which is Sanskrit. But there are similar modes of address in Latin and Greek, because they belong to the same group of languages, and Persian. And in those modes of address, that is, the declinations are far greater than the ones that are being employed today. Now, if our modes of address are more, naturally our linguistic expression is more versatile. There are more modes of expression. It becomes more versatile. We become, in our thought, more versatile, and we are able to act in some way or the other, or at least we are able to try to act. At least they try. And so, for example, there is in everybody the need to dance. In everybody there's a need to dance. In everybody there's a need to say a prayer. In everybody there's a need to show respect to someone and to show contempt. In everybody there's a need to bless the other, as there is a need to curse the other. And for example, the entire Mahabharata is full of curses and blessings. You know, the entire Mahabharata. And when they don't come true, it is a disaster for the person who has said it. So imagine the weight that is given to the word. So that weight is now, the word is without that weight anymore. Not only is the word without that weight, we are making visuals also void of their meaning. Everything is losing its substance. So there is a pad, but there is no padarth. You know? And every earlier, an aesthetician in Pune, for instance, who was also a Sanskrit scholar and he had wanted to translate my works as well, with the semiological bias, you know, like making a thing which is understated or implicit come forth from something that seems opaque. You know? And he used to tell me that in the question of reading poetry or seeing a work of art, which is, you know, self-generated, as it were, we have also to see very positively its, what do you call it, self-referentiality, that it keeps on referring to itself, not as if it is something outside. Why is that a work of art, a work of poetry, can do it and provide content, is what, you know, at a higher level than the one which is presented purely by copying or showing something. Yeah. Showing something which is outside. Just showing it or claiming it to be a fact. A positivist kind of factuality of anything. So he would, at that time, that self-referentiality of a poem or a work of art meant that you had to transcend meaning as being something purely physical. You know, like at this moment, you're listening to me, I'm looking at you. These are purely physical phenomena that can be stated by, say, the video. You know. So, if you want to transcend it, you want to say something which actually speaks of more than that. Just that you are listening to me, I am talking to you, and I am looking at you. You want to be able to get to a point where you can begin to suggest what is going on in our relationship.
We go back to what we saw earlier.
Yes.
Can we put what you said into the visuals we saw of the volcano in Iceland?
Yes.
If you could do that, it will be, you know, easy to locate it.
To some extent, you did that already when you
Yeah.
said that thing.
Yeah.
And then when I elaborated by saying that you are living on that same planet, you know.
Yeah.
Now you see.
Can you hear me? Yeah. We've already seen some footage, which was live footage, of something happening in a distant part of the world. Now we're going to watch the news. It's something that we do casually all the time these days. And through these videos that we will keep bringing, FIR.
Sunil Raghunath joins me for more on this. Sunil, the Congress really taking this battle to various probe in this for joint parliamentary probe, now the CBC probe. What are the details of the memorandum the Congress submitted today?
So they have given a chronological mandated by law to look into this matter, and it's in that context now that the CBC will have to take cognizance of the complaint. It's a written complaint, and they will have to inquire, and if they see substance in this, an FIR as demanded by the Congress will have to be registered. This, of course, we will have to wait and watch. It's going to take some time, but they have, of course, given the entire trajectory of how there have been violations in the defense procurement procedure and how later on Cabinet Committee on Security has been brought into play.
And watching a controversy that has to do with a fast-moving aircraft, a deal over a fast-moving aircraft across two continents, Europe and Asia.
You see, it is at the same time virtually that thing is taking place in Iceland, and this discussion is being is going on about a very real thing where you do not know what the fact is, and you will never know. You will never know what the fact is. It cannot begin to come to you unmediated, as it were. It will be mediated, and you will always consider that this is whatever anybody says about, say, this question about airplanes being traded between two states, both of them claiming to be great democracies. They are actually acting towards your disempowerment. Even the debate itself is acting towards your disempowerment because you do not have any role to play in all the shenanigans that go on in defense affairs.
So you mean to say a conversation in which you can take part, in which you can say something, hear something,
Yeah.
in which you're an actor, like you mentioned dance earlier.
Yes.
Both the cases, you're watching a volcano go off, and you're watching a volcano of a deal for an aircraft go off. And that's disempowering.
Yes. Both are disempowering because the way they are proposed to you, one as a continuous presence. And then, because all the time, everything is being proposed. The stock exchange, for example, you have to do that. The entire communication that is taking place between us now, globally, is proposing itself as a present continuous.
Will you let me tell a joke about present continuous? Okay, so I had to work as an editor, and I had to take a lot of writing samples from different people in English. And there is a way to tell, more often than not, that it's an Indian person writing in English. Because they use the tense that Shahani ji mentioned right now. Indians, when they use English, they love to use the present continuous. I am wanting to tell you, sir. I'm not going to tell you. In fact, I will be wanting to tell you which is the even more undecided form of the verb. Now, if we see it in Hindi, हमारे यहाँ बहुत सी संस्कृतियों में किसी चीज को सीधा बोलना अपशकुन माना जाता है. मैंने ये किया, अवधी में या भोजपुरी में ये खराब माना जाएगा. वो कहेंगे ये मुझसे हुआ, क्योंकि मैं करता हूं, इसकी बात करना अहंकार माना जाता है. तो जो हमारी भाषाओं में, अपनी भाषाओं में गुण है, जिसमें हम सामने वाले पे जोर देते हैं, अपने अहंकार में नहीं रहते, वो जब हम अंग्रेजी में लिखते हैं तो वो एक बहुत ही ढीली ढाली झोल झाल वाली भाषा में सामने आता है. एंड आई गेस दैट इज डिसएम्पावरमेंट, बिकॉज यू कैन मेक सेंस टू अनदर पर्सन. I am wanting to make sense to you, but are you understanding what I am trying to tell you?
So, you see, now everybody is beginning to think in that way, in a disempowered way. As a result, you do not have citizens anymore. You have subjects. There's a regression.
Demotion.
Demotion. There's an idea that we can't be citizens. Almost, because that damn thing is so autonomous. It is totally autonomous. Everything that's happening in the world.
That volcano just doesn't care for us, does it?
It is not only the volcano, but whatever goes on, whether somebody goes to the Supreme Court or not, becomes sort of irrelevant, because the matter is not going to be settled in consultation with you or me. It is going to be settled purely in terms of the nature of commodification of Raha and of each one of us. We are actually being treated as people who are greedy, because we are in a consumer society and we have to be greedy. If you're not greedy, you're not considered to be human anymore. Yeah? And if you do not accept to live in fear, you're not a citizen. This is the new equation which has been proposed to us, at least over the last 50 years. And there has been a great contribution of the devaluation of language, which has assisted that. Language in every way. That is, the proposals of television, the proposals of cinema, even the proposals of the static image. And even the proposals of the static image. Now, this devaluation has been taking place for a long time, in a way. In certain cultures, for example, it was owned that knowledge was restricted to the presentation of a form which would be static. And it's one of the great problems of knowledge which was raised by certain schools of thought was that how can I say, for example, that somebody sitting in a blue costume there, is a man from Gwalior, if I know that yesterday he was not in Gwalior, and tomorrow he is going to London or Paris or anywhere else. Now, like that, you can't say anything about anything. This planet of ours is moving around its own axis and also around the sun. And the great thing about photography, for instance, and our perception of the world, is that it is changing. It is not only that is changing, this is recognized, I think, best by the Upanishadic tradition, that is changing, but I am also changing. That the perceiver is changing, you know. And it was taken, I think, much further because by the Buddhist thinkers, as well as some schools which arose out of the Advaita traditions, as well as the Islamic traditions absorbed by the Sufis, you know, that the transitory is the truth. You know, that which is transitory is the truth, not that which is permanent. You know, and now is that transitory, however, is not the kind of transitory thing which happens without significance. It deprives you of significance. It has to, that significance has to be stressed. And it can only be stressed if you are allowed to think beyond it. You know, that it is not now that I can do anything about it. I can pray, for example. I can wish, for example. I can begin thereafter to initiate intention, let us say, persuade people. Like Gandhiji used to persuade people. He did not hit them on the head and said, you've got to do this. He always persuaded people. Like he was talking to the terrorists, or who were called freedom fighters in his time. Now, he was trying very hard to send messages to them to stop using methods of violence against the oppressive British state, for example. And he was trying to tell them that violence never works. The ends and the means have to meet together to finish off violence on this earth. He also wrote a letter of this kind to Hitler, you know, saying that I believe that what you're doing, I'm nobody, but I believe that what you're doing is wrong, you know, and a lot of my friends here believe it. Now the terrorists in India, for example, said that if you are trying to persuade us, why don't you listen to what we have to say? You know, we have to persuade you. We want to persuade you to our ways of thinking. And it's so it went on. But now, how do you persuade? How do you pray? How do you wish? That is something which comes into play.
May I chip in? This is, I'm sorry I'm intervening, because he's talking about something very good, but I want to just stress something he said. You know, sometimes it's a little difficult to imagine because he's bringing things from way deep down. But imagine it like this. You are students of this university. This is your reality, but that reality is transient. You were not born in this university. You will not remain in this university forever. You are here in the hope of using this education for something in the future. Correct? That's the one. And then he mentioned something about Gandhiji. So I know what he's going to say next, I'm guessing. So I will take a subjunctive dive here. Many of you may not have heard the name Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a priest in Germany. He was a wonderful man. And he's best known for actually organizing a revolt to kill Hitler in 1941. He was captured, he was imprisoned, he was tortured, and 2 weeks before the Second World War ended, he was hung to his death. Now what we don't know, and what new historians are telling us, is that 12 years before his death sentence, a good 9 years before he organized the assassination plot against Hitler, he was writing letters to Gandhiji. And he was asking Gandhiji if he will train Bonhoeffer in the weapon of Satyagraha. And Gandhiji was writing letters to him saying, आना तो आ जाओ यार, बहुत सारा काम रहता है यहाँ पे, तुम यहाँ आ जाओगे, मैं यात्रा में हूँगा, लेकिन देख लो तुम्हारे पास खर्चा इतना होगा. And he almost came here, but for some reason it fell through. He didn't come. Now imagine he did this in 1933. At that time, the Nazi party was really powerless. Now if Bonhoeffer had come to India in 1933 and learned the weapon of Satyagraha and used it against Hitler, यूं होता तो क्या होता? Right?
Yeah. Can you possibly show the Christopher Nolan?
We are going to see a part of a film now. We're going to see a part of a film called Interstellar. It is repeated ad nauseum on our TV channels, on DTH TV and cable TV. It's made by a director who's a friend of Shani ji, Christopher Nolan. In fact, the two of them, I should have related this in the introduction itself. The two of them are trying to revive the old way of shooting films with Kodak film, not doing it on digital. So yeah, let's see this little piece.
Wait a second, get the quantum data, I'll find you there. They might still make it.
Let's just have this system up there to save.
My apologies, there's a slight glitch. There is a gremlin sitting on the computer and
Here, let's make it count.
my apologies, we are up. Can you see clearly at the back? Raise your hand if you can't see it.
This way. About 200 meters.
Vanishing.
Was floating through space too long?
130% Earth gravity.
What's up in here? Should be right here.
There's signals coming from here. The beacon.
Wreckage. Where's the rest?
Where's the mountains?
Those aren't mountains. They're waves. I never was coming away from that.
We need the recorder.
Brand Doyle, back to the Ranger now.
We're not leaving without her data.
Back here now. We do not have time. The second wave is coming. We're in the middle of the swell.
I got it.
Get your ass back to the Ranger now. Brand, get back here now. Yes, you are. Come on, face ass, get back here, Noah. Come on. Get to the house. Go, go, go. Into the overriding inside hatch. The engines are flying. Grab it, shut it down.
Thank you.
We met it a couple of times, but we have a similar view about, the need to bring back cinema in its fullness. And that's why we are welcoming Kodak back. And he has done an absolutely fantastic thing, which is that even on the 70 film with the biggest budget ever, with millions of dollars spent called Dunkirk, he had no digital interface through the whole process. He is, for marketing reasons, of course, been selling Dunkirk on videos as well. But that's at the end of everything. And when he has already shown something on 70 of spectacle of a kind which can provoke you into thinking of the world we live in. Now, for example, you saw in Interstellar, in this portion, a fantastic picturization of what we may discover on another planet. Nobody knows it's like that, you know. If this thing happens, then, and his film starts with which made me sort of sit up when his film starts about the lies that we believed in during the Cold War, and which prevented our knowledge from going further. In the scientific field as well, you know, because they were both Russia or the Soviet Union and the Americas and the NATO countries were suppressing information or technologies which going from one place to another. And many of our present day corporates do the same thing, you know. They do not want to share not only technologies but even art. Like I hear that Ravi Shankar's alaps in the future were bought up.
A lot of young people here who know Ravi Shankar. He was a very well-known sitar player, classical musician from Varanasi, right? He was from Bengal, but he trained also in Banaras.
Actually trained in Mayer.
Mayer.
He was sitting in the auditorium.
And he was married to his daughter, and Ali Akbar's sister, whom I had the privilege of meeting and had received blessings from, thanks to Ritika, you know. So now in this passage, you saw almost a similar thing happening And you were, I'm sure, moved by it as well. That is, you saw the threat which is inherent in even the natural. You know, the natural can also be so aggressively difficult. You know, with I mean, can we go on living with nature in the way we have been living? By living, I also mean the way we've been thinking.
You mean to say there's no cute and cuddly pandas and Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck?
Exactly. And there is, actually, we have to constantly give up both these civilizational ideas of either conquering nature or just being so passive as to give up on every attempt to deal with it, you know, to survive it, if you like, you know, to go beyond survival and to aspire to something else, and we cannot go on living just letting it be. We have to aspire one way or another. And our prayers, for example, are always that.
I think aspire brings us to wings. Right? Shall we? So you've seen, you have seen a volcano in Iceland. Then you saw live television news in India. Then you were taken to outer space. Where do you think you're going to be taken now? We'll take you flying. That caused a flutter. Now
It's better. But I want you to go along with this sentiment, you know, that if I had wings, I would go flying, you know, to my beloved, you know. So if it can inspire, they all want to dance, I think, so they're yelling away.
It's got everyone worked up.
Yeah. So, you know, this is the use of the subjunctive, you know, and it's a very, very wonderful mode of address that comes, the subjunctive is the second verb, right? It comes after the first implicit or explicit verb, and it mixes up the tenses. Like in English, I wish that it were true that I fly. Just imagine. I wish that it were true that I fly.
I wish it were true that I wasn't studying at a university and acting in a film in Bombay. That's the subjunctive for you. If there's one word that you're going to take from Shahini ji's lecture today, please just take back the subjunctive. It's the form of the verb that beautiful poets, good artists always use. I guess even sculptors.
Yeah.
Even sculptors.
Any image maker.
Any image maker. The subjunctive.
Yeah. And you see, what had happened was one of the films that I made based on the Khayal tradition of this very place, Gwalior, musical tradition. it was loved by some people abroad and they wanted to buy it. But they said in the subtitling, you may not use the subjunctive. So I said, go to hell. I don't want to say it. If you are going to repress the subjunctive, this film doesn't have any meaning. It is only, it's all its sorrow in that film, his sorrow can only be overcome by the subjunctive. You know, that you can overcome this terrible life only by that aspiration to go beyond, you know, in some way or another. And that's, so this I came to know in 1989 when I presented the film in Europe. But many years later, that is about 20 years later, I met my colleague and Bresson's wife in Paris. And almost the first thing she said to me was, Kumar, you can't imagine what is happening to our society, our culture, our interpersonal relationships. So I said, what is it? She said, the subjunctive is disappearing from our language and from everything. So I said, I know about it since 1989. Why are you telling me today? But it is such a great tragedy that it has actually disappeared. I refused not to use the subjunctive. I said, I have to use the subjunctive.
सब्जेक्टिव का एक सबसे बड़ा लाभ, यहाँ पे बहुत सारे जवान लोग बैठे हैं, आप में से जिस किसी को अपने मनपसंद का लड़का पटाना हो या लड़की पटानी हो, वो ये ध्यान रखें कि जब तक आप क्रिया रूप को कल्पना से नहीं जोड़ पाएंगे, आपकी तरफ कोई पलट के देखने नहीं वाला, चाहे आपकी जुल्फें कितनी भी खूबसूरत क्यों ना हो। और जो शाहिद जी आपको बता रहे हैं, वो अगर आपको ध्यान में रह गया, तो आपको आगे चल के ये सोचना पड़ेगा कि ये वाला या वो वाला, ये वाली या वो वाली। सबजंटिव की ताकत वो है। और अगर प्रेम की बात आ गई है तो बैलगाड़ी में बिठाएं हम सबको। हम लोग अंतरिक्ष में हो आए हैं, हम लोग जहाज में उड़ लिए हैं, ज्वालामुखी पे बैठ लिए हैं, अब जरा एक बैलगाड़ी में बैठते हैं। Why is this relevant? You're all students. There will be people who will judge you by your report card. They will not care for your bhagya. They will not care for your qualities. Result हो तो हर कोई बाँचे, पढ़ाई न बाँचे कोई भी, इसकी एक रीडिंग हो सकती है। तो जो शानी जी बात कर रहे हैं अभी, यूं होता तो क्या होता, उसका ये हमारे जीवन में मर्म है। गलत तो नहीं कहा? आपके शब्द
I will just ask for it after a few minutes. You see, all the other modes of address which have disappeared have to be also recovered. There are no modes of address which should be abandoned. One of the terrible things that has happened, for example, is that we do not have any more people even speaking languages which have contributed to the lives of people all over the world, like the languages of Buddha or the languages of Jesus Christ. And we have to now possibly search that meaning in other forms altogether, other than language. And we have to work through the image, we have to work through music. In Interstellar, already you saw how some of it is being worked. You have to appeal to the unsaid, that which has not been said and is not being allowed to be said through such means as to sort of affirm what Pascal, who was the great master of mathematics as well as people like Bresson, today he was a predecessor in philosophy and mathematics of Bresson. He said, the heart has its reasons that reason cannot know. So
the heart has its reasons that reason cannot know.
It was at around the same time that Western music, I think, reached its height in the work of Bach. And you will see how full of joy it is and aspiration.
And before we play that, it is time for us to take a moment collectively and thank Shahani ji, क्योंकि गहराई की अपनी एक भाषा होती है और हम में से बहुत सारे लोग उस भाषा को अब बर्दाश्त भी नहीं कर पाते हैं, क्योंकि हम अपने अपने फोन, अपने अपने छोटे दुख और सुख में, अपनी छोटी छोटी आशाओं और निराशाओं में इतने डूबे हुए रहते हैं कि गहराई की भाषा हम तक पहुंचती नहीं। शाहनी जी उस गहराई की भाषा में बात करते हैं और मुझे यहाँ इसलिए बिठाया गया है कि मैं उस भाषा को आप तक थोड़ा जो भी गलती सलती अच्छे बुरे तरीके से पहुंचा पाऊं। तो मेरे ख्याल से ये अच्छा रहेगा कि आखिरी हम अपना टुकड़ा चलाएं, उसके पहले एक बार दोनों हाथ मिलाकर जोर से शाहनी जी का आभार व्यक्त करें। इसका भी नोट बना ले, आपको बहुत काम आएगा।